What is going on, y'all? Psych Perspectives, GeoFucks here. And I just left an amazing workshop facilitated by an amazing individual at the Latinx Technology Community Center on the east side of Flint, Michigan. And it was in partnership with another amazing nonprofit organization, the Greater Flint Health Coalition's Cases, and Mothering Joy University, Parent University. They do an amazing program that is all, focused on helping parents and families and children lead healthier lives when it comes to parenting and interpersonal relationships, communicating, mental health, financial resources, education. It's a holistic approach. And it was an amazing, very great presented class today. So what I want to talk about in this, because especially with everything going on, and then in relationship to a post that I saw another one of my associates, friends make on their Facebook, and then looking at their lived experience as well. Sorry y'all, I'll be trying to have this up correctly, and this stupid thing don't never be keeping it all the way together. But anyways, and even that, saying this stupid thing, is negative and toxic, and really shouldn't be using that type of terminology, because you never know how that's going to impact somebody, or they hear that, and if you're saying that to a person. But I corrected myself, I was wrong for that. Hold yourself accountable. So anyways, this video, what I want to talk about is ACEs, and that's what the entire workshop was on. It was like an hour and a half workshop on ACEs, the acronym A, C, say, E, A. All right. So ACEs, okay? Adverse childhood experiences. This needs to be talked about more. It can be argued that in my hometown of Flint, Michigan, basically 90+% of the population are survivors and or victims of ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. It can probably be argued, if we're looking across the country in the USA, it's probably 60+%. And obviously, when you start getting into communities of color, people of color, lower income, working class communities, you tend to see it even more because of the systemic issues that pretty much exacerbate the problem. Now, I want to put a preference and say, this isn't to say that people who are in middle-class communities, middle-class families, people who are in upper-class families, wealthy, rich, this isn't to say that just because you have money, or because you're white, because you live in the suburbs, whatever it may be, this isn't to say that you don't have ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, because let's be real, you'd be surprised what's going on in these so-called suburban households, middle class, upper class, wealthy, well-to-do, financially well-off households. They be having the same types of abuse. It's just that they're able to hide theirs better because they're able to use their money, their wealth, their finances, their resources, to make it seem like everything's going well, when in reality it is the farthest thing from the truth. When I look at my own experiences growing up, I grew up in a middle-class household, middle-class Black American, African-American family, and there was a lot of ACEs going on, despite the fact that we were financially well off. Still didn't alleviate child molestation, physical and mental abuse, still didn't alleviate violence, etc. It's just that we had money. So I just want to make sure that I'm not just saying that it's predominantly Black people, African-American, Hispanic, Latino, Asian, indigenous, people of color, lower income, working class, working poor, inner city. It isn't just that population. This is universal issue. So going back to what my friend said on Facebook today, and then just looking at her lived experiences, and then going to this workshop, it just really connected everything to me. So what I mean by connecting, her status was discussing how, there needs to be something said and addressed when it comes to deadbeat fathers and this mentality that, you need to pick better. And her status hit it on the nail. She basically was like, now keep in mind, women are not going around to the ain't shit man depot and picking up, like, they're not seeking out deadbeats. Again, most of us, when we meet people, they put on this fake facade and make it seem like they're great people, but then that's how people get hooked in line and sinkered into these toxic relationships. You don't know that these people are going to be deadbeat fathers. You don't know these people are going to be immature and irresponsible. You don't know that these people are liars and manipulators. You don't know that these people are abusive. You have no idea, because when you first meet them, hi, my name is, oh really, you want to go on a date? People put their best foot forward when they first meet you. This is why I am very big on, you need to stop jumping from person to person and actually take the time to get to know people. Because just because you've been talking to somebody for 2 months, 3 months, doesn't mean you know them. People are really good at leading on facades. I'm just going to be real. But, and then on the flip side, she also went into holding women and mothers accountable. You also need to be held accountable. Because a lot of times, like I say in my videos, y'all miss obvious red flags. And it's ridiculous. Okay? In the same breath that these deadbeat, ain't about shit ass dudes need to be held accountable and, quite frankly, avoided at all costs, you women and feminine people and mothers, you need to be held accountable. You need to learn how to get some damn boundaries and some self-respect. Because a lot of this is, I'm just going to be real, it's out of low self-esteem and not having a sense of self-worth. That's why a lot of people end up in these janky ass situations. Not to mention ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. If you grew up seeing women be abused, seeing your mother be abused, your caregiver being abused, your father wasn't in the picture for you and was a deadbeat or hit or miss, you're going to, unfortunately, the likelihood of you also being in those similar situations is rather high. It doesn't mean that you have to be in that situation or that you're going to be in that situation, but the probability, the likelihood is rather high because that's what you were exposed to. You feel me? And this is why I'm, here I am knocking at 30. I purposely decided I didn't want to have kids for this I don't, as a trans man, born intersex, trans man, transgender, transmasculine person, I don't want to give birth. I don't want to carry a baby. I don't want to be pregnant. None of that is appealing to me, personally. But in theory, looking at how I grew up, if I was ever to adopt a child or, have a partner that had a child and what have you, I wouldn't want them growing up the way I grew up. And now I want to put it like this. I'm not saying that everything was bad for my childhood, but I went through a lot of adverse childhood experiences that I had no business going through. And it did shape how I view my life, how I, live. You can't keep having children growing up in broken, dysfunctional, toxic families and then being surprised that child grows up as an adult and also has issues. I grew up in a situation where, hey, my mother had no business having me. It is what it is. Should have had an abortion. This is why I'm pro-abortion. This is why I will forever be pro-choice, because it's ridiculous. You're sitting up here having children when you're not mentally stable, you're not financially stable, the father isn't in the picture, the other parent isn't in the picture. It was literally, most of these children, if we're going to be honest, most of us were unwanted kids. It can be argued that. Because again, a lot of this is one night stands, hooking up with people, not having access to birth control and contraceptives, and or choosing not to use them, not being educated and informed on how pregnancies are created, STDs, STIs, etc. You know, and all of this, and then growing up in toxic ass households where ain't nobody giving you real love. Because again, your parents are supposed to be building you up, and a lot of us, if we're going to keep it real, our first bullies were parents and family members. So how are you going to be getting built up by somebody that's also talking trash and putting you down? Adverse childhood experiences. Okay, and then wondering why a lot, and I'm just gonna say it, when you look at a lot of black women and girls, they don't have self-esteems because it's not promoted in the black community. And in fact, when it is promoted, y'all sit up and look at black women and black girls and black feminine people when they do have a sense of self-worth. Y'all go out of your way to knock them down and to belittle them and to put them down. And when you look at a lot of these men, I'm just gonna be real, they are jealous of the women that they're with. They don't even like you half the damn time. A lot of them are also in the closet, living double and quadruple lives. But homophobia, biphobia, transphobia, all of this plays a role in why people are living these facades. You know, they sit up here, they get with a girl or a woman that they like, they claim to like, and then they turn around and drag her for filth, make her life a living hell, purposely get her impregnated. Because let's be honest, a lot of these narcissistic, toxic, dysfunctional dudes use children to trap people. That's what they've been doing. If you really think about it, if we're going to, and I don't agree with the terminology, but you remember the term anchor baby? Okay, when you look in the black and brown community, let's just keep it real. And not just the black and brown community, but when you look at how a lot of men, cisgendered men in particular, move and operate, they're homosexual babies. Okay, they're narcissistic anchor babies. Because what they do is they will purposely knock you up, impregnate you, knowing good and well they don't want to be in a committed, monogamous, whatever relationship with you. They don't want the child. They don't even want to raise the child. They don't want to be responsible for said child. But they're using the child so they can continue to have access to you. Because think about it. If you have a child with somebody, you're on the hook for at least 18 years, at the bare minimum. And realistically, until that other person dies, you're going to be dealing with them in some form or fashion. Because you literally created a human being with the person, right? And if you notice, these are the same groups of men. This is how you got to start paying attention. I'm really starting to really think about some things. Obviously, these are the same groups of men who don't want to use condoms. They go out of their way to not use condoms. You know, they're always trying to come in, folks. They're always ejaculating. These are also the same groups of men who are spreading STDs and STIs around. Because if they're having unprotected sex with you, what makes you think they're not doing that with other people? And you'll also notice a lot of these dudes have multiple children. They didn't tell you about it. Got multiple baby mamas. They didn't tell you about it. And in all situations, they're not involved in those children's lives. Creating what? Broken, dysfunctional households. Creating what? Adverse childhood experiences. Creating what? More broken and dysfunctional ass human beings who grow up to be broken and dysfunctional ass adults in many cases. Let's just keep it real, because it's cyclical. So it just keeps happening, generation after generation after generation. And it's not to say that we can't mitigate it, as the facilitator of this amazing workshop did today. We can mitigate it. We can make changes. We can help folks. We can heal. We can, provide resources and support to mitigate those problems, to alleviate some of those problems, and to decrease those issues. But that's just it. How about we don't have those issues to begin with, so we don't have to waste all of this time and energy on trying to combat it when you just don't have to deal with it. And a lot of this starts with stop having unwanted ass kids to begin with. This is why I am pro-choice. I am pro-abortion. This is why I believe in comprehensive sexual education that actually is teaching you at an age, because you can have it at age appropriate levels, K through 12, age appropriate levels, to teach you, about sexual health and sexual education. Also, universal health care, so people can have preventative care such as IUDs, birth control, honestly, vasectomies, hysterectomies, Birth control should be over the counter at this day and age. It's 2022. You should not have to go to a doctor to get a prescription for birth control. IUDs should be readily available for people who have vaginas and ovaries. And there is actually birth control for people with penises. Okay? And it needs to be, in my opinion, it needs to be funded through our tax dollars. I don't get why we can't do it. You look at other countries, this is, and I'm going to have information in the description box. When you look at other countries, their abortion rates significantly dropped. The teen pregnancies significantly dropped, not because they banned abortion, not because they banned contraceptives like how the USA is trying to do things, but because they provided access to comprehensive sexual education and access to contraceptives and access to socialized universal health care. So everybody, for the most part, have access to these resources. Now, this isn't to say that other countries are just 100% better or 100% perfect, because they're not. They have their problems, they have their cons, they have their issues. We all can improve in various ways. But I would rather live in a country that is going to fund and support comprehensive sexual education, universal health care, contraceptives, than live in a country that's trying to make it seem like we shouldn't have access to contraceptives, health care, bodily autonomy. No, you're going to see more teen pregnancies. You're going to see more deadly, potentially dangerous abortions, because they're going to go to some back alley place to handle that situation. And, and let's be honest, why are we having adverse childhood experiences? 9 times out of 10, you were an unwanted child. That's why. Also, looking at the USA, just looking at the USA, right? Damn near everybody is impoverished. A lot of people are poor, impoverished, working poor, working class. The middle class is literally disappearing. It really is becoming the haves and the have-nots, with a lot more people over here in the have-not population. People are living check to check. So not only are you forcing people to have children they can't take care of and that they don't want in many cases, but they're also living in poverty with no universal health care, no child care, no infant baby formula, food shortages. This is a recipe for disaster. This is why we have so many people who are struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, a litany of mental health issues brought on by adverse childhood experiences. This is also why so many of us have substance abuse issues, because a lot of people use drugs and alcohol and other things such as sex to cope with adverse childhood experiences. People are literally carrying trauma throughout their life because, number one, you probably shouldn't have been born in the first damn place. Number two, look at the society. We don't really create in the USA, just for an example, in the USA, we don't really have a society that supports humans. We don't have a society that supports parents and families and children. We don't have a society that supports single people and adults. We don't really care about people. We care about money in the USA to the extreme. So it's just something to think about when you hear people claim to be pro-life, but then they also want you to live in poverty, don't want you to have health care, don't want you to have food. But yes, they're pro-life. They're pro-life when you're a fetus. Once you get here, it is this. They don't give up rat's patooey about you once you get here, especially if you are a part of a marginalized identity or multiple marginalized identities. And what I mean by that is you're black, you're brown, you're Hispanic, you're Latino, you're African American, you're Asian, you're Pacific Islander, you're poor. You have a physical or a mental disability. Yeah, we're really not going to support you. And let's just keep it real. We see what's going on. Information is in the description box below. But that workshop really got me thinking. Like, so many of us are victims and survivors of ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. And when you sit down and look at how so many of us have been impacted by these things, and then you wonder why you have all of the chaos going on in our families, our friendship groups, our communities, our society, when you sit down and you look at all of it, it's really not surprising. Because like I said, it can be argued just in my hometown alone in Flint, Michigan, that basically 90% or more of the population has survived and or was victimized by adverse childhood experiences. And then if you look at the entire country of the USA, it can be argued that about 60% plus or more has also been victims or survivors of ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. And when you look at that just alone by itself, it's not surprising the issues that we have here. And I'm just talking about one country. I'm just talking about the USA. Now start thinking about this from a global standpoint. Look at other countries, okay? Look at other continents, okay? So when you look at it from that standpoint, it's really something, because a lot of people are living in absolute hell, being abused, being victimized, going without, and struggling and suffering, and people really just seem not to give a rat's ass about it while claiming to be pro-life. But anyways, I'm going to do another video where I talk more about my friend's Facebook status, because that status hit it on the nail in so many ways. So I will be doing another video on that. So stay tuned, and I'm out.